For the better part of about the last decade, I've been seen as somewhat of a Pokemon hater. I mean, I like to think of myself as a Pokemon realist, but a lot of diehard Pokemon fans haven't seen me that way, because I've been very critical of Pokemon games, which I think is rightfully so, but I promise I am a fan. I mean, you tell me, would a Pokemon hater buy this much Pokemon Lego? My point is, I am a fan of Pokemon. I've talked about this before. You can believe me if you want, but I grew up on the franchise. I've played all the games. I have a bunch of merch. Did I show you my Legos? It's just that I have been very critical of the games, specifically ever since they made their Switch debut. Unfortunately, what the Switch highlighted the most for them is just how incompetent they were at developing a video game. I mean, the online Pokemon reputation with me specifically started with Sword and Shield, when I became known as the guy who was obsessed with the trees, which, to be fair, it was so very clearly an asset from their 3DS games that they tried to just sneak on over and hope nobody would notice, but when you copy-paste that tree 1,000 times, I'm gonna see it. And sure, the tree wasn't the only thing wrong with the game, but you'll start to see a pattern here as we moved into Scarlet and Violet, which in retrospect, out of all the Switch Pokemon games, was very clearly the worst one. Whether it was the repeated copy and paste textures that they built the entire world out of, or the fact that entire chunks of the levels would disappear and pop in and pop out while you were trying to play. In fact, sometimes they would pop out right beneath your feet, making you fall through the bottom of the game. In fact, this game was built so flimsily and so rushed that you could walk up to any building and just see the empty framework inside it. Parts of the world would twist and melt as you walked past it. It was just the strangest and most bizarre game design I think I've ever seen, and it all amassed into one ugly and bland image, which I think was the worst offender of it all, because this game was supposed to be set in the beauty that is Spain, but you look at any environment from this game and it's just, is this what Spain looks like? Because, like, I've always wanted to visit, but maybe I should save the money for more Lego. I mean, I don't really know how else to explain it. I'll just summarize it by saying that Scarlet and Violet was so ugly that even your mom would be offended. I mean, it really is that bad. I made a whole video called, Hey Game Freak, We Deserve Better. And while my bias for a Pokemon game that I actually managed to enjoy is going to leave Legends Arceus out of this, we can look at Legends ZA, which Game Freak clearly thought it would be easier to build a nice looking world if they just set it in a relatively small city, and yet somehow they still managed to mess that up. I mean, you had buildings smoother than a Nintendo YouTuber's brain, and you also can't enter 99% of those buildings. So even the buildings were less penetrable than a Nintendo YouTuber. Why do I keep doing that? Sure, all these complaints are very visual based, but all my complaints, for the most part, have always been visual based, because despite the games looking like this, despite me believing that we can do better, I've still played these games. I still completed the Pokédex and Scarlet and Violet and Sword and Shield, and I managed to have some sort of fun doing it. I mean, end of the day, it's the collectathon of it all with characters and creatures that I have a ton of nostalgia for. I've just wished that it didn't look like butt. Then, Friday, last week, 9 a.m., I was asleep, but at that time, there was a Pokemon Presents that I woke up and I watched later. If you don't know what a Pokemon Presents is, it's something that they do every single year on Pokemon's birthday. It's kind of like a Nintendo Direct, but somehow more boring. No, I'm kidding. It's usually not for me, though. Like, you know, there's only so many times I can wake up at the ass crack of 8 a.m. just to see what new JPEG they added to Pokemon Cafe Remix. Like, it's not really a concern of mine. But I gotta tell you, this time around, this Pokemon Presents, maybe it was because it was the 30th anniversary, they actually pulled out all the stops. I mean, Pokemon Cafe Remix has like 30 JPEGs now. It started with a mini Game Boy. Do you remember when Nintendo made that NES and SNES Classic that came preloaded with a bunch of games you could play in a little mini console? Yeah, it's like that, except it's not. It's just music with like 45 cartridges, and you have to switch each one out for an individual track every time you want to change the song, which is awesome. I love this. I like it so much. I would have bought one if it didn't instantly sell out. I'm kind of hoping that they do more more songs. They release like DLC little cartridges, you know, that you can pick up and buy for other games. As far as I can tell, this thing isn't branded specifically as Pokemon. It's a Game Boy that plays music. So I'm just saying, Nintendo, if you release 45 tracks from a game like Pitfall, Beyond the Jungle, you got my credit card. Anyway, then we get a bunch of like Pokeslop and Gale XD, which is cool. Anyway, then this. Cool. It looks awesome. Got him. It looks awesome. It looks really good. I'm not sure what everybody watching at home has thought that I've wanted for the last 7 years while I've been complaining about the way that Pokemon looks and wishing that we had better, but it's literally this. I'm not using the word literally like a millennial uses it literally when they actually mean figuratively. Like, I'm not literally dying at how good this is, but this is literally what I've been asking for. I mean, I feel like it didn't take a rocket scientist to know that I wasn't asking for Pokemon to look like Horizon Forbidden West running at 4K with RTX on and 100 million gigabytes of RAM playing on the NASA space station. Like, I wasn't looking for anything like that. I just wanted it to not look terrible. Like, it was a very low bar. Like, I gotta be honest. Like, if we were playing Limbo, you could walk under it. I mean, I made a joke in my last video about Game Freak on Xbox being different to Game Freak on Nintendo because clearly one of these teams can make games and the other can't. But I feel like finally we're seeing Game Freak try the other Pokemon games, especially Scarlet and Violet. I mean, they just look like a pre-alpha build of a game that wasn't finished yet but slapped out to meet a deadline. There's no other way to excuse or explain why those games just looked so bad. This looks like an actual game. Like, it looks great. This is what I've been asking for. It's better than what I've been asking for. I mean, look at that water. It's gorgeous. I have like chills right now because I can't believe in a video about Pokemon, specifically Pokemon's visuals, I'm saying the word gorgeous. Game Freak knows what they've done here, and they're actually excited to show it off. And that is the passion that I'm looking for. Like, I'm gonna show you so much more of this, but the best part about Game Freak that I have always admired and appreciated is that Game Freak are honest in their gameplay trailers. For every game we've ever had revealed, if the game looks bad, Game Freak shows you exactly the game. There's a Sword and Shield trailer where literally trees are popping in and out in the distance. I remember the Arceus trailer had Pokemon in low frame rates. They don't hide anything, they record the game as it is. So this, as far as I'm concerned, is the game how it is. And that little blurb that says doesn't reflect final gameplay, that honestly means that it could get better. Then we get more of these beautiful sweeping shots. You see particle effects of leaves, you see shadows, you see lighting, you see textures of like the ground that doesn't look like old unrendered mud. In those games like Sword and Shield and Pokemon ZA, I mean, they looked so bad as it was, but it made things like the trees and like the windows stick out even more like a sore thumb. But here in Winds and Waves, the game looks so incredibly nice that not only do I have nothing bad to say or pick out negatively, but it actually highlights how good something like the waves look. The waves are standing out among the rest of the beautiful picture as a highlight of something that looks even better than. Because these waves has to be some of the nicest looking water I've seen in a Nintendo game. I mean, maybe like Sea of Thieves has more realistic and nicer looking waves, but other than that, I mean, this is pretty top tier. This is pretty, I'm gonna say the word gorgeous again. I think you can probably tell by my demeanor here, but this is the most excited I've been for a Pokemon game since I was a kid. I've wanted this big, open, gorgeous Pokemon game where I can just go and find a Pikachu. This is what I've been wanting for so long. Ever since I fell out of being excited for Pokemon games, this is what I've wanted. I mean, the kid in me could cry. The adult in me could cry. The YouTuber in me could cry. Not for the same reason as the kid or the adult, but because I get to actually make a video about something I'm happy about. Also, the YouTuber in me could cry because he's happy that this kind of proves him right. I'm not gonna lie. Because, like, come on. I've spent, I don't know how long, being critical of these games and trying to make my point clear that we deserve better and that the games are bad. And I know most people are on board with me, but you know that I get flack for this every single time from the Pokemon community that always say the same tired defense and excuses like, oh, it's just a kid's game, or oh, it's just Pokemon, or what are you expecting? Like, it's supposed to be about the gameplay, the visuals don't matter. A million excuses, like everything under the sun to justify why the games look bad and why I'm over complaining. But like, what's your excuse now? Because I know that you love this. Then we get to these three little cuties right here. I'm gonna be so honest, when I first saw them, didn't like them. It was my first complaint. I was like, I don't like them. Not the dog. Not the Pom-Bomb. That might be the best Pokemon they've ever done. A little fire Pomeranian. That's the best thing they've ever done. And I was mad at the water gecko. Because I was like, you literally just did a water gecko like 2 games ago. This thing looks like it evolves into Inteleon. Like, it has the same eyes. It's a water lizard. But then on my Nintendo podcast, my co-host Sully had me rank all of the generations of Pokemon starters. And when they were all next to each other and I had like this clear image visual, I realized these ones, they're actually really good. They've just gone really cute with them. Like, look how small the little dog's face is in the frame of its whole head. And then the owl, I came around on that too. At first I was like, it's just a Rowlet. But no, it's just, look how mad he is. He's just like an angry little guy. Game Freak weren't done with this trailer though. They had a surprise in store. And again, when I say confidence, when I say the way that it's edited is just exciting and fun and full of surprises and mystery, you would think a typical reveal trailer from Game Freak would end here. Like, we've seen the world, we've seen the game, we've given the starters, we get out. And they kind of make it seem like that's what's about to happen, because they do a shot of the ocean where you're close to the surface, but it hits this peak and it slowly starts to tilt, and then it quickly rushes towards the ocean. And now we can see what looks like a trail underwater and a world waiting to explore below the waves, which was such a great, exciting reveal that there's even more to this game. There's another level to this game. And then it ends. And we get the title screen, we get the logos, the winds, and the waves. But then we get, in my opinion, the best part of the entire trailer. Right at the end, this. Well, also this. It's on Switch 2. It seems to be only Switch 2, which, good. Game Freak was never actually limited by the Switch 1 in the way that they limited themselves. Like, the Switch 1 wasn't the problem when it came to Pokemon games. But what we're seeing right now with the Switch 2 with games like Resident Evil is that it's actually kind of a magical powerhouse. The power of the Switch 2 has definitely raised the cap and raised the roof for Game Freak to be able to play around a little bit more. But that aside, 2027. One of my biggest points in all of my Pokemon videos and all of my Pokemon discussions and all of my Pokemon criticism is that Game Freak rush out their games, their main series titles, to meet a deadline. And that deadline is always near the end of the year so they can start rolling into the Pokemon cards and the anime and everything else. Because the biggest issue with Pokemon is it's grown so much bigger than the games. I say this a lot, but it is the world's largest franchise. You have Poke Parks opening up in Japan. You have Pokemon merch for literally anything you can imagine, and we can't build the next iteration of these things without the games, because it all comes back to the games. The games reveal the Pokemon so that the Pokemon cards can make the Pokemon cards from the game. It's all on this strict deadline. And while a lot of people would always say to me, yeah, but Wood, the games aren't the moneymaker for Game Freak anymore and for Pokemon. It's everything else. That's inherently just not true. The games make up 30% of Pokemon's entire revenue. A lot of people that might not understand business might say 30% isn't a lot compared to 70%. That's a small number compared to a big number. But when you're talking about a billion-dollar company, 30% of that is millions of hundreds of millions of dollars. No giant company that level is going to want to lose or risk 30% of its revenue. That's insane. But also, it's different when you consider that 30% is what leads to the other 70. I don't know what point I was making. Where am I? 2027 means this is the first time Game Freak has actually skipped and missed that release window. They're actually taking extra time, and it also doesn't say early 2027, so they might not even know the release date just yet, or it could be mid to late in the year. We could be almost 2 years away from this game, and that's an incredible thing. You can slap 2028 on that for all I care. You can start GTA 6ing this bad boy, release it when it's ready. Nintendo are synonymous with this mentality of making a game great and releasing it when it's done. And the Pokemon games have always countered that point and gone against Nintendo's basic way of developing video games. Can you imagine if Nintendo rushed out a Zelda game mainline title or a Mario every year or two so they could sell merch and trading cards? That's not how it works on this platform, and yet for some reason Pokemon kept getting away with it. And sure, we don't really know much else about this game just yet. We don't really know how it plays out, the gameplay loop, how many buildings you can actually enter, how many Pokemon are going to be in the game. Like, there's still questions, concerns, queries. As of right now, there's nothing to complain about. Everything we've seen looks great, and they're clearly taking their time to work on it. And hey, if it sucks, I got Fire Red now, so it doesn't matter.